because of some of the things he's doing. All right, we had already prayed a little bit. You know, my cousin was saying don't put her too much on camera, so I only got half of her on the camera. Okay, so we're doing color combo on the go as we're on our way to brunch. Today is the birthday girl.
Yes, happy birthday.
4, 5 guys. And I'm going to celebrate. I'm going down to brunch, house 157 in Roseville. So we're going to see how this is and see what it's all about and go from there. But we were just holding a conversation. And, you know, this is going to be a long conversation, 20 minutes, whatever the situation is. But this will be posted so everybody can check it out. You know, we just here for light, love, and letting people learn and also helping people grow. So pretty much me and my cousin, we're just holding this conversation about these little mini humans that we have, right? Kids. And how sometimes, okay, so I'll go back to what I was talking about first.
Okay.
And that was the revelation of my daughter when I had to do CPR on her. That was in 2016, yeah, because she was 2. So I had to do CPR on her, but I never thought that I would actually have to put those things into practice. Meaning, yes, I learned how to do CPR. I was working for a company. You know, they taught us CPR and first aid and stuff like that. But some of those things, you never think that you actually have to put those things into practice. So when I had to put that into practice with my daughter when she stopped breathing, I'm saying, because she stopped breathing, she had no life in her body, her eyes were set, and her, you could actually see like how pale her skin started to turn as I was doing CPR on her. Like her blood, you could just tell the blood coming down. It was like her lips turned purple, all of that. So I knew she didn't have any life in her body. So, you know, as I'm doing CPR and I'm like asking God to, like, you know, whatever this is, I don't know what this is, you know, just save her. You know what I mean? Because I'm scared.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm still doing CPR on her. And my neighbor came over and he started doing like the Heimlich on her. He picked her up and started doing the Heimlich, and then all of a sudden she just starts moving her lips. So you could see all the pinkish, and like her skin turns like a blush, and it's going, and you could tell it's coming back up to her forehead and coming back up to her lips and stuff like that. So I'm like, Lord, like, what is this? Like, what happened? So we take her over to the hospital. Basically, the ambulance came and they were like, well, maybe she had a seizure. And I'm like, nah, that wasn't no seizure. I said my baby wasn't breathing. So, you know, I had to really, really help them understand she wasn't breathing. But, you know, again, like I said before, when you're telling somebody that another life is not breathing and then all of a sudden that person just comes back to life, in some way, shape, or form, you can't believe that, you know, because
you saw it with your own
I saw it with my own eyes, and I believe in miracles. I believe Jesus is real. I believe that God is real, and I believe that He does do things, even if it's to give us a revelation, you know, just to wake us up. So that was my wake up. And when we were in the hospital and they wanted to take her down to do seizure activity, they were like, yeah, you know, we're going to check to see if she had a seizure, yada, yada, yada. They take her down, they bring her back up. They said, we couldn't find any seizure activity. I said, I know you can't, because my daughter did not have a seizure. She was not breathing, you know. And then a doctor said to me, she said, well, if she wasn't breathing, she wouldn't be here. So I'm like, okay, well, you know, I know who my doctor is, you know. So, you know, I understand that, and I don't discredit doctors in any way, shape, or form. Because there are doctors who basically, they have the knowledge, they have the knowledge and the wisdom, and they actually operate in the Spirit of God. You understand what I'm saying? And then there are people who have knowledge and they have wisdom, and they operate in that wisdom and knowledge that they have from those books. But the reality is that God gave them that. You know, God gave them that gift to basically use it towards the world, whatever is helping people, whatever it may be. But to be haughty and be like, oh yeah, well no, that's not what happened. But that's not what they can say anyway. You know, they can't say that your baby died and it came back to life, because in the medical field, it's almost like saying like those things aren't, you know, that's not possible. But the reality is, it is. It's possible. It's very possible for someone to die and come back to life, because it's very possible for God to say it's not your time. You know what I mean? So, and I believe that's what I believe, you know. So at the end of the day, when I was sitting in a chair, she was in the bed. They had like oxygen and stuff like that on her, and they did tell me that she had something called RSV, and she was 2 years old, and they was like, well, that's something that normally kids at like 6 months, infants and stuff like that normally get, but she ended up getting it, and basically she had it in her lungs or whatever the situation was. So yes, there's a possibility she could have.
Our conversation was it started from that, and then you were saying, like we were just saying how children they have a say.
They have a say. They're humans. They're basically, so sometimes I think we tend to forget that those little children have the spirit of have God as well, have that spirit in them. So it's like sometimes we don't look at it that way. They're like, oh no. Well, at the end of the day, we all are sinners, saved by His grace. He died, He came, He rose, basically, and He left us with the Holy Spirit. Now, when we surrender and say, you know, I accept you as my Lord and Savior, because even we think that kids don't accept God at a certain age. It has to be a specific age for a child to accept God, and that's about 12 years old. I don't believe that. I believe that when God moves in your heart at any age, He will use you. You know, you got 2, 3 year, 4 year old kids, you know, who you could tell that the anointing is all over them. You understand what I'm saying? Not even by the way they speak, but just even themselves. So I think that sometimes we tend to forget that they are human beings too. And what happened with me is that when I was coming up, I was controlling my kids. Like, I was like, yeah, nah, you ain't doing this. I don't care which. It is what it is. I say what I say, and that you don't get a say. And at the end of the day, they do. No, they don't get to talk back. They don't get to be like, oh no, you're not gonna tell me what to do. No, they don't get to do that.
Right. It's still respect.
But it's still respect. But you also take it in consideration that other human being is a human. You understand what I'm saying? Just like you're human. How did I feel when somebody didn't hear me?
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? How did I feel when I couldn't? You want to be heard and you want to be seen. Even God sees us. So why would we look at our children and not see them and say, let me just dismiss what you're talking about. Let me dismiss who you are. You're not going to have a say. You're going to be seen and not heard. That's the lifestyle that we live, because we grew up like that, to be seen and not heard. Do you think if I was seen, you know, if I was seen, then I would be able to feel like in some way, shape, or form I could say what I needed to say and tell my family all the things that I was going through? You understand what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, sometimes
use the right 3 lanes to turn slightly right to stay on New Jersey Turnpike. Signs for New Jersey Turnpike.
I think you also have to make that safe space too. So when you let them know that they're being seen and they're being heard, then they feel
safe.
Yeah, so they can talk to you about stuff.
Use the right 3 lanes to turn slightly right to stay on
like,
New Jersey Turnpike.
I never
Signs
talked
for
to
New
my
Jersey Turnpike.
mom about this or my parent about whatever.
Right. So and that's what. So with that revelation, you know, because again, like I said, when my daughter was laying in the bed when we were in the hospital, and you know they told me she had RSV, I was sitting there and I was like, God, what is this? Like crying, like what in the world is going on? Like I know I seen with my own eyes that she wasn't breathing. I saw all of this. So, and it was like I said, the most scariest thing ever. And just as I'm sitting here talking to you, God said to me, she never belonged to you. And it was a revelation for me, because I'm like thinking to myself, like, what? Wow. I was here to, he said, you're here to love, teach, and show them my way. And it was in a subtle, but it was also in a stern. So meaning subtle, it was in a loving voice, but it was a revelation for me to understand that these are not your children. These are just these children. These humans are just loaned to you for a certain amount of time, and that is for you to guide them, show them my way, because one day they would have to grow up and they have to learn, and they have to go through their own life experiences, and they have to teach as well. That's what discipleship is about. Teaching so that they can go out and teach. You understand what I'm saying? So from that point on, I stopped parenting my kids the way that I was parenting them.
Wow.
And even though it was hard, because it was a lesson that I learned. Like, cause after a while, my family was like, "Oh, you don't beat your kids. You don't do this." I'm like, yeah, but my kids don't. At a certain age, you got to understand, kids are going to think that they can talk. They even feel like they want their voice to be heard. I have one child that's like very open. You understand what I'm saying? And even though he's open, he's not a disrespectful kid. He wants to be heard, and you could tell in his voice that he feels like you don't see or hear him. You understand what I'm saying? And I'm like, I see you, I love you, I hear you. And boys long for attention. They long for attention. They long for that connection. They long for that love. We all do. Every last one of us want love. That's all we ever wanted.
Yeah.
All we ever wanted to know is that you love me, and that if I'm going through something, if I'm experiencing something, that I can talk to you, and I can come to you, and I can say, you know what, this is how I'm feeling at the moment. Sometimes we dismiss all of that, and I don't want my children to think that they're dismissed, like they can actually come to me. If my kids are experiencing hormonal, changes, which is something they will. They go through puberty. They go through different things, and puberty will send you through different hormonal changes. And I realized as I was growing up as a kid, like I said before, I was a tomboy.
Oh yeah.
I was a little tomboy. I wanted to play in trees and mud and dirt. But guess what? I also had sex too. You understand what I'm saying? So as a teenager, even though I was a tomboy, I still had feelings of wanting to be intimate with another person. You know what I mean? So I think that's what we, sometimes we forget. Like, the same things you experienced as a child is the same thing that those children will experience. Right. Now they may not be the kid. Yeah.
I think, like you was just saying, like just communication, because the same things, we all are different beings, but we going through a lot of similar things in life.
Right.
And the things that we experience that maybe you might have thought like, darn, I can't talk to this person about it.
Right.
They probably be thinking the same thing.
I think they do.
Yeah.
I think they do that only depending on how you respond to them. Right. So if you respond, because my daughter, she'll come to me and tell me just about everything. Mm-hmm. She'll say, "Mommy, I didn't appreciate," or "Mommy, I didn't like the way that person looked at me." She does that. Mm-hmm. Like, and I love that, because she's not going to be afraid to tell me what she needs to say.
Right.
And if I responded to her like, "You know what? Don't you ever let X, Y, and Z." Right. You understand what I'm saying?
Or sweep something under the rug
and be like, "No, that's all right." That's just how they are. Yeah. No. You need to know that it's safe. It's safe for you to come to me. It's safe for you to hold a conversation with me. It's safe for you to say what it is that you need to say, and allow me to just be quiet. Even the word says to be slow to speak and quick to listen. So even though we may not agree with something that they may say, right? You may not even agree. Be slow to speak, because you don't want to respond in anger. Right. Because responding in anger shows how it actually makes you feel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if
Because
it
sometimes it be your
there you go,
traumas or anything that
That's
you
right.
haven't resolved, and your reaction to whatever it might spark,
it might
a
spark
trigger
some
into
trigger,
you or whatever.
and that's why you need to recognize your triggers.
Yeah.
That's why you need to recognize what triggers you. And that's something that I didn't realize until, like, you know, my daughter, you know, she's not breathing, and then God's talking to me. You know what I mean? So that trigger, I realized that was a trigger for me for a very long time because I was abused. So I didn't want my kids to talk about nothing sexual. I didn't want them to, this is my first set of kids. I didn't want them even thinking about it. You understand what I'm saying? Like, don't you listen, you're not going here. You're not, I literally was like a tight leash on each and every last one of them. Like my daughter, you know, my stepdaughter, she couldn't wear what she wanted. You understand? Like, I was like, oh no, you gotta put on a dress longer than your legs, you know, longer than your knees, and put tights on. That's how it was, you know, because that's how I was raised. And then not only that, I didn't want people looking at her. You understand what I'm saying? I didn't want people to see her when it was a reflection of how I felt like if a man saw you a certain way, then he was going to treat you a certain way. You understand what I'm saying? And how a man treats you is not a reflection of you.
Right.
You know, it's a reflection of how they see you. That's like me, you know, that's like me going to church and I have on a dress above my knees, and then somebody in the church is looking at you and they're like, oh yeah, well, you know what, you better cover yourself. That ain't got nothing to do with me. That got something to do with you. You know, and how you see me. You understand what I'm saying? And that's the same thing with us. If we don't recognize those triggers, they will spill out onto our relationships, they'll spill out onto our children. And that's why I said, you
were saying something about when it's slow to respond. That takes a lot of patience, because you know, when somebody say something and you might not agree with it, and it's like you want to just automatically respond and come back to it, but
you want to have a comeback.
Yeah,
and ego and spirit cannot coexist. They can't. Your ego is what wants you to come back, and the spirit is saying quiet, because God has it under control anyway. If we allowed ourselves to be quiet and actually listen to what that individual is saying, you will hear a lot of pain in that. You will hear a lot of pain in their words, because you'll hear exactly how they are actually feeling. Like, this is how they're feeling about themselves. And how they feel about, okay, I'm upset about this, and this. And why can't you understand this? You got to listen to people. And listening to people will actually give you a clear indication of what the pain and the trauma that they're dealing with themselves. And that takes time. You understand what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, like I said, you know, sometimes you don't want to recognize it, but once you start to see that, you're like, wait a minute, wow. I had to recognize that I had so much trauma built up that I was not releasing. I didn't release that trauma. I didn't even forgive myself. I didn't forgive nobody. And that's why I was so angry. And it caused me to be bitter. Anger causes you to be bitter. And then guess what? Bitterness causes you to be blind. So that means that you can't actually see what God is trying to show you, because you're too fixated on the fact of what your pain and that trauma has caused you.
Wow.
And that's where I was at. But to God be the glory, I'm not there anymore. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I'm not there any longer. But I still have work to do, because again, you know, sometimes he's still working with me. He's still working with me, and I'm still a work in progress. Just like you said, we all are. We all need to still learn. We were talking about this morning about love, and you know, on prayer call, and I was like, man, I think we really don't know what that word means. We say it, just like, remember the time we were talking and we were saying like, yeah, yeah, we say things like, oh, I love that car.
Right.
I love I love that dress on you. You know, things like that.
Yeah.
We kind of say love out of context sometimes because we really don't know what it requires to love. We're like thinking like, oh, no. You know, if I love
Love
you,
is not conditional.
not at all.
It's like, I was reading some book, and then one thing that popped out to me, it was talking about love, and it was breaking down, you know, all the qualities of love, but it basically said God's love, like God is crazy in love with each one of us.
Right.
Yeah.
And to think that something, because God is a spirit, could be so crazy in love with you, and that's because we are spirit. Like, we are his. We belong to him. We're spirit. So, and sometimes we look at it and be like, oh my God, well, that person ain't doing what I want them to do, so that means they don't love me. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to inform you, but love doesn't expect anything in return.
Right.
Nothing at all. And that's why we have a hard time with staying in relationships, because even like in a marriage, we're supposed to serve one another. Like, how can I serve you better than I served you yesterday? Instead of looking, well, what can you give to me? What can I take from you? Because you know what, I gave you this, but you ain't give me nothing. Love is about serving. You know, so.
But what about, because I was watching it, you watched the Tyler Perry movie?
I watched the whole.
So.
Oh, you talking about which one?
The one
the
that
new
just
one?
came out.
The new one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. With the woman who was being abused, and her husband wasn't drunk.
She loved her husband more than anything. Mm-hmm. And they had been together, I think, for like since they were 17 or teenagers or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he treated her
like
so bad,
trash.
and she continued to serve him and stay. And then finally, when she went home, she told her mom, like, I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I thought I was supposed to just stick it out, and
because that's what our family showed us.
Yeah, that's basically what she said.
That's what our family showed us.
And then her mom, kind of broke it down or whatever. It was, I don't know, people had mixed feelings about the movie, but I think when you watch it, it has a lot of discussion points. Yes. Like, it's so much that happened in that movie that you can actually have discussions about. Right. Like real life discussions. Mm-hmm. But the movie itself, I don't know, everybody has their opinion about it.
I mean, no, I thought it was pretty good, and it also gives you because even when a girl had gave the letter to her and broke down everything that he did, that he had did to her, and I even saw like wow, like, even though he did so much, he was broken. He was dealing with his own trauma. Just look at his family. Just look at the family. You understand what I'm saying? Look at the family structure. And I think that's what we don't recognize. We don't recognize that you are dealing with, it always goes back to, how was you raised? Who loved you? Who protected you? Who abused you? You understand what I'm saying? Who neglected you? It goes back to that. Yeah. So, and I think that first and foremost, we need to get out of the concept that you should be loving people more than you love God.
Right.
You love God first, and then he provides you with everything that you need. Meaning even the people. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to have bad experiences. Doesn't mean that we're not going to have experiences that is not going to teach us something, because everything that we go through is for us to have a changed heart. I think that's why we go through experiences, so that our heart can be changed, so that we can become more and more like Christ. So, and you take that bad experiences and you turn it into something good, But the reality is that, yes, it goes back to what the structure was, and yes, even if you were two broken people coming together, how can you recognize that, okay, dang, I'm a broken mess. What do I recognize about myself before I'm ready to point out what somebody else is? Because I need to recognize who I am as well. And if I know who I am, then why am I attracted to you? Right? Why am I attracted to brokenness if I know who I am?
Right.
So the reality is you're attracted to what you are.
Wow.
And if you are broken, you're attracted to brokenness. And that is exactly what that's exactly what you're seeking. You're seeking out something broken. You know, to become, even though we've been through a lot of different things and stuff like that, you got to get to a place in your life where you're fully surrendered, fully trusting. You understand what I'm saying? Because you know who you are. I know that I was a broken mess. I know that I had issues. And more every single day in my husband's presence was the ability for me to recognize that I was. Because he was loving me in the hell. You understand what I'm saying? He was loving me through the mess. And don't get me wrong, I wasn't no person that was out here running. I wasn't doing any of those things. But I was broken mentally and emotionally. And he was broken as well. You understand what I'm saying? But we came together to make something beautiful. So, you know, that's why sometimes it's hard to actually see you.
All these people going on a Saturday morning.
Girl, to New York. Everybody want to go to New York. Okay, we just trying to go to Roosevelt. All right. But yeah, it's a blessing to actually see you. It's a blessing to see that. Because when you don't see it, it takes you recycle those experiences over and over again.
Right.
You start recycling. You're like, wait a minute, why I keep attracting these broke, not disrespectful? Did you really take a look at yourself?
And then sometimes it'd be like, why did the light bulb come on so late? Like, you just get this,
ding, 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 ding.
And it's like, why didn't I get that light?
Because you weren't supposed to. You know, even, I think it's a scripture that talks about God redeeming the time. And he's not necessarily, quote unquote, saying that he will put more time on your life. But he will redeem the time that you lost. Because to God, one day is like a second.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, with us, it's like one day we've lost 24 hours.
Right.
You know, because 24 hours in a day. That's because we have to live in time. God does not exist he is time. So he doesn't exist in time. He doesn't like exist with a time limit. Put it that way. He lives outside of time limit.
Yeah.
So to him it's like, yeah, I'm gonna redeem the time. So he'll make something happen in a matter of a couple of days that we've been trying to wait on for the last 20 years of our lives.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's how miraculous, that's how good he is. And that's why he's saying he'll redeem the time. And yes, sometimes it takes that light bulb going off like, whoa, wait a minute. I've been wasting all this time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like 50.
Yeah.
And I've been wasting all this time. And he will redeem
me it was like it was this simple.
That simple. That simple. I could have just, Lord, I could have just followed and trusted you.
This way, and I went around the block and came back.
Guess what? 3
times.
Yeah, you know, I could have just went A to, you know, I could have got to Z real quick.
Yeah.
Nah, don't work like that. You know, you gotta, sometimes, you know, but I think that it's a good thing as well, because had we not been through the things that we went through, our character would still be where it was. So our character, God wants us to have, you know, he wants our loyalty to be with him. So when our character, he's changing us, changing your heart, changing your mind, changing the way you think, changing your perception of things and how you perceive things in life. So your character changes as well. You know, you see how a person is and how they might have been, and you know, that's why they be like, can't teach old dog new tricks. Girl, God can teach you something in a matter of seconds, you know, that you didn't know for your whole entire life. He can change someone on their deathbed. So don't tell me what God can't do. God can do anything he wants to do because he's God alone. He's all powerful, all knowing, all one. He is God. So I just said it. We think that God can only do certain things because we put God in a box. We put him in a box and be like, God, well, why didn't you show? He said, I've been showing you all your life. You just chose to go your own way, and he with us. Yeah. On the scripture, love, he said, that's love. He said, if you make your bed in hell, I'm still with you. and that's exactly what we're doing out there in the street, making our bed in hell, and he was still with us. He said, I've been showing you this whole time. And that's why, you know, his grace and unmerited favor, like, God just, so, you know, he's God. You know, God all by himself. He don't need no help. Yeah. And that's the blessing of it. That's the blessing of it.
I don't think we're going to make our reservation at 12.
What time is it?
11:42.
Girl, we going to call them and let them know that, listen, we'll be 15 minutes late. We'll be about 15 minutes late from the time.
No, our exit is 11. Where are we at?
We passed 8, so
okay.
Yeah.
Let's say 27 minutes away.
Okay, so we're.
So I guess.
What is it? It's like 12:15. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can still call them and tell them that we made reservations. We're gonna turn this off.
Okay.
we're gonna turn on color conversations. You know, it's a good conversation. We'll come back on our way coming back from Roseville. We'll get back on this color convo on the go. But in the meantime, hopefully you guys been blessed by this word and been blessed by what we were talking about. Y'all be safe, be loving. See ya.
See ya.